There's something that I started to think about where, you see, because the whole thing of the male vote being Republican, but it's not, the key thing was it wasn't so much some necessitated so it's not that the men are voting Republican. There's women who are voting Republican because in some way a part of their political interests. The key thing is the right end of the spectrum are far more individualists that are in very specific and relatively small collectives. These collectives very much only look out for their political interests. And now there's some schizophrenic, and of course, always a schizo. Always some damn schizo hanging out, just allowed to skits out. So there's a framing of the political sides that I keep having to walk through. The right is collected and unified, but it only because of common political interests. They're different groups of people that have no reason to bother with politics. They have families. They have what they do. They know who they are. They're not out uncomfortable in their skin. They don't need political identification. It's not something they need to have. The left, unfortunately, has shown more and more by action they need political identity. That they need, and then beyond that, you then get the issue of identity. That why is it that what we associate with the left end of the culture keeps having to depend upon some kind of identity issue. I identify as this. I identify as that. And these identities that aren't real. That in no way, shape, or form is there something else in the phenomenal universe these identities come into contact with, so that there's some kind of interaction between the phenomenal universe and their identity. Because so the right has done a lot of writing about this. And because the right has had to deal with the issue of the modernist concept of the youth subculture. And so youth subculture to traditionalists and people who are right of center is fundamentally unhealthy. It shouldn't exist. But it's just one of those things that just does. I mean, in every period of time, you would have, the idea of the lads would festoon themselves in one or another kind of outfit, and to show some kind of loyalty to something or another, and that's just how that is. But this idea of some kind of complete internal culture of its own is just considered unhealthy. And so there was a lot of dealing with that. We will call it, sometimes it was the satanic panic, sometimes it was just dealing with quote-unquote alternative lifestyles. This thing called the right was just dealing with subculture, youth subculture, this thing invented by magazines and fiction writers and fashionistas and such. And kind of sort of like people who theorized about such things, about subculture. But subculture, in the 90s, older people didn't like our subculture. I could think of that. And now, what's interesting is it became compared to, other subcultures prior, but the older people didn't like our subculture. And there was very good reasons why. And so I started thinking about, this is actually something that now is legitimately a problem for the left in a way that older Democrats don't really understand. They don't have a subculture that is, so the right wing is having something happen that there's no way around now. It is a legitimate subculture forming, but it's the MAGAs in a way. Like, other people identify it from the outside, and how it's identified is they have a range of knowledge that they cite, and it's this verboten and disagreeable range of knowledge that they cite, so they are then identified from outside. And because that's now a thing, because that's now like a real, that's a reality of where we're at with the present time in politics and culture, the left is dealing with now these people who they don't know about the subcultures they're part of. Their subcultures are now these like third and fourth generation derivative kind of fake subcultures that have almost gotten to the point that you kind of wonder what the attraction to such subcultures would be. They don't even appear to have sort of real. They're transient to the point of ceasing to exist almost once they exist, and this is something that I think is evidenced by the whole idea of gender can be anything at any time and can totally change at any time to anything. It's almost exemplified in that, and that because there's no smallest unit of gender. It's not real. It's not like a real phenomenal thing. It's something psychic that does seem to be linked to unstable thinkers, unstable minds, and people with a variety of other kind of personality issues and things like that. So, and now, why is this important? Okay. You have sort of online this way because of subcultures before, like b-boys, rudies, skinheads, metalheads, all these subcultures that they would have a name for themselves. That then online you have then these people who they kind of have their online subculture identities. And there's a lot of people who they don't do that at all. They're like, I'm into everything all the time. I like it all. Everything's great. But there's people who they're like the Trekkies. They'll even have a name that you won't know unless you're like really down. Goons, the Goons. If you're EVE Online, be like, oh yeah, I'm in the Goons. And so that tells you a lot. They're in Goonswarm Federation. They're in this kind of space. They probably do this kind of gameplay. And they've probably been playing the game for this amount of time because they're in this, or they're in that federation. So the thing though that when you see this online more and more with the right, there is now, because of you guys are you guys, and we all don't really understand why we hate you, but we know we're supposed to. It gives this anti-hero appeal to the right that males cannot not see. They see this immediately. It's wait. So these are the bad guys who are into, and that you look into them and you find out like none of them are exactly in the same groups. One's a reactionary Catholic, one's this anti-feminist, one's this, former military person who is rather agnostic, but, has like spiritual beliefs or something, puts it that way. All these people that you wouldn't really have them in the same room anyplace. They maybe like the same video games. Here and there they have affinity for other things culturally, but they're not even from the same cultural groups. This is this genuine unity by a kind of identity as you all understand the world a certain way. And because we refuse to understand the world this way, we're not even going to humor any of your arguments or any of your insights. It's easier for us to constantly identify you as the outsider, but it's not working. Because in some way, shape, or form, your side has to have something that they really feel like they're a part of. And what keeps showing, I don't get it. I'm like, why do you guys keep picking this messaging? Because why would you set each other's ethnic groups against each other this way? Like, that's the part that blows my mind. I don't get that. Why would you bring that kind of thing up repeatedly if it like... And so there's a lot of this thing of, oh, the Republicans don't talk about race, blah, blah. It's like, well, that's because they're comfortable with the subject. They're not uncomfortable with the subject. It's not, they don't have to bring it up because this isn't the Scots versus the English. This isn't Ulster. Like, I'm sorry, there's real ethnic strife in places at times, and no, that's not happening here. So, they're comfortable with, well, most places people are getting along fine, because that's true. That's absolutely true. Anybody who's generally middle class, no matter what color they are, they're usually going to end up at the end of the line pretty close to one another. If you stay middle class, if you do the things that keep you in the middle class, but there's this we can't convince people that no, that actually a simple life really shockingly works very well. It's very satisfying. You actually get a lot out of it, but one of the things that now is starting to hit me is we're being told from the left by the artists, the intellectuals are saying you guys are fascists who have united you are uniting corporations and your party and the government, and so yet when we expose that, yeah, when the Democrats kind of ran Twitter, they actually had a bunch of former FBI agents and people from former DHS agents, like, actually working there. Like, and this was very, very strange, because this was such a high number of them that it really started to beg a question of, like, how is it that this many people from that specific set of the section of the government would all end up at that job? And then it started to turn out people looked, and the same thing at Facebook. And then to hear, the leaked video, when, Hillary Clinton lost, people at YouTube were physically crying. They had a huge meeting at which people were weeping. And so it's one of these things like, okay, so if that's not the unity of party and corporations, I'm sorry, I'm just not buying anything you're telling me anymore. It's become more and more clear. It's not that, no, you guys are on the right, we're on the right side of history. No, it turns out nobody wants to support that view with their money. Once that shows, everything collapses. And now everything's collapsing because nobody really wanted to support the views of the left with their money. And corporate America had apparently an entire generation of people in it that are like, all we've got to do is keep burning money, and all of these people who are bad guy mustache people with their Chadley workouts, they'll eventually yield. They'll get soft bodied, they'll get married, and they'll yield to a woman, and they'll spend their money the way we want. And that's not what's happening. And one of the key things, another thing I know I had brought up a lot, men spend money when they're married. And I kept bringing this up about the MGTOW movement, that I was like, you got to actually worry about this. This is actually going to become a problem, because that is the issue. And what I found, the reason why I found this like so odd. Okay, I had a conversation at one point with a woman who's rather feminist styley. It is now about a decade, 11, 12 years ago probably. And she didn't really understand the spending patterns of men, that I was like, no, men will buy like tools or something. And thinking that, well, this will come in handy later. It's not, they have different spending patterns, and they really spend on more fashionable items or luxurious items or kind of fun things when they're in the nesting stage, when they have a woman. Then it makes sense for you to have a better environment, a soft environment that a female will feel good in. A human female prefers soft items and good smelling places. So you have to have a little more space, you have to have a couch, you have to have a bed, so that kind of thing. Somehow this wasn't understood, this just wasn't acknowledged. And a big part of this was like almost everybody in like kind of the world of MGTOW and the kind of men's economics even brought this up. Like, no, and then Turd Flinging Monkey famously was really like, no, they're going to collapse. Without us spending money on things as husbands, it all collapses. And I was sitting back like, okay, and then the quotes. The one that I particularly liked was, apparently it was something like Augustus addressing his generals and members of the Senate and chastising them that none of them were willing to have sons who will be heirs to Rome. And he's like, all of you have palatial estates, but you won't be fathers. And it was apparent. It was, that was still, it was that kind of society. So it was kind of interesting, that I'm like, it is all going to collapse without that player's money. Without the cape. Can't be saved. Later.